Well, let's talk about infrastructure, because infrastructure is the one area where I think it is legitimate for government to borrow, because they're putting things in place that are going to benefit future generations. But the Andrews government has got an appalling track record when it comes to projects to build roads, rail, hospitals and so on, doesn't it? When Daniel Andrews was elected in 2014, he promised to spend $500 million on a new Westgate tunnel, which he said would remove 5,000 trucks a day from Australia's largest overhead car park, otherwise known as the Westgate Bridge. That's 9 years ago, James. I guess that tunnel must be well and truly finished by now.
You would hope so, Nick, but actually, no, it's still got another few years to run. In fact, that tunnel project went from a $500 million election commitment, and then it ended up being a $6.3 billion project. And then they found some contamination in the soil and other project issues arose, and the boring machine sat idle in a warehouse for 18 months. And now it's expected that the total cost of this one project will be $10.3 billion. And it comes as no surprise. The Andrews government has now over $100 billion of infrastructure projects on the go. And since their election almost 10 years ago, only 15% have actually been completed. The slogan down here by the government is Victoria's Big Build. Well, let me tell you this. Our research shows that Victoria's Big Build is 63 years and 9 months behind schedule when you put all the projects together and add up how far they are behind.
Well, let's just go back on that Westgate tunnel figures again. There is something called the iron law of mega projects, and that is that when you build mega projects of any description, they'll always end up costing at least a third more than you budget for. And the benefit to the public in terms of the number of cars that go through will be about a third less. And that's just accepted as a given. But what you're talking about here is initially a $500 million project that blew out to what, 10 billion? Like more than 20-fold?
Yeah, it's now more than a $10.1 billion project. In fact, the Auditor General in Victoria has had a massive task of going through all of these Andrews government infrastructure projects, and they have ranked 66% of them as high risk, high value. But what we're seeing is the high risk element of that at the moment.
It'd be very interesting to contrast that with New South Wales, where the former Liberal government was very successful and got better and better as it went along at building tunnels. It's got the second longest road tunnel in the world now under Sydney, and it's up and running, and it's a beautiful thing. It's like a cathedral under there, James. So it's not that government can't do this, is it? It just needs a government to be organised enough to do it.
Well, that's right, and we're crying out for it here in Victoria. Since in the first 5 years after the election of the Andrews government, the ability for people to get across the city has reduced by 8.3%. Travel times have increased by 8.3% since the election of the Andrews government. So what this big build is actually doing is adding to congestion at the moment.
Well, they've been very focused on health, of course, so we'd think that they should be doing a little bit better with the Franklin Hospital redevelopment. What's the latest on that?
Well, the Frankston Hospital, Nick, started a few years ago, and it was said to be a $550 million project for 120 beds, essentially a massive upgrade to the existing Frankston Hospital. By the following year, it was a $610 million project. And then the year after, it had all of a sudden increased to $110 billion, twice as much. But how many extra beds, Nick, do you think they get for paying for two times a hospital? Not one. The excuse for this Frankston Hospital upgrade costing twice as much is that they were future-proofing it against future pandemics.
Yeah.
But if you look at the health data, in Frankston, since this hospital was announced, the number of people being seen during the appropriate time for emergencies has dropped from 83% to 60%. I'm sure the people of Frankston have no great messages for the Andrews government on this one.